Here's what you need to know right now. The Social Security Administration just processed over $17 billion in payments affecting more than 3 million Americans. And if you worked as a teacher, firefighter, police officer, or any government job where you didn't pay into Social Security, your monthly check could increase by over $1,000 starting this year. The Act ends the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset, which had reduced or eliminated benefits for over 2.8 million people who receive a pension based on work not covered by Social Security. But here's the critical part. Most people are missing. If you never applied for benefits because you knew WEP or GPO would reduce them to almost nothing, you need to contact Social Security and file an application now. The SSA is saying you must take action if you're in this situation. Retroactive payments go back to January 2024, and those already receiving affected benefits began seeing their new monthly amounts in April 2025. This isn't automatic for everyone, particularly if you previously avoided applying because the old rules made it not worth your while. Thousands of retirees are leaving money on the table because they don't realize this change affects spousal benefits and survivor benefits too. The deadline to maximize your retroactive payments depends on when you file your application, and with the SSA processing over 289,000 new applications since the Act passed, the sooner you act, the better. This is real money we're talking about. Potentially tens of thousands of dollars in back payments plus hundreds more every single month going forward. Now, let me walk you through exactly what this means for your situation and what you absolutely need to understand about how this whole thing works. You see, this isn't just some minor policy adjustment where a few people get a small bump in their checks. We're talking about a complete reversal of rules that have been penalizing public servants for over 40 years, and the implications are enormous for anyone who spent their career teaching kids, putting out fires, keeping communities safe, or working in any government job that didn't withhold Social Security taxes from their paycheck. Let me start by explaining what these rules were in the first place, because if you're just hearing about this now, you might be wondering how something this significant could have been hiding in plain sight for so long. Back in the 1980s, Congress passed two separate provisions that fundamentally changed how Social Security benefits were calculated for people with government pensions. The first one, called the Windfall Elimination Provision, was signed into law by President Reagan in 1983. The second, the Government Pension Offset, actually came even earlier in 1977 under President Carter. Both of these were designed with what seemed like good intentions at the time, but they ended up creating massive financial hardships for millions of hard-working Americans who dedicated their lives to public service. The Windfall Elimination Provision was supposed to prevent people from getting what lawmakers called a double benefit. Here's how they saw it back then. When you work a regular job and pay Social Security taxes, the formula that calculates your benefit is designed to be progressive, meaning it replaces a higher percentage of income for lower earners. But if you had a job where you didn't pay into Social Security, like teaching in many states, and then also had some other work where you did pay in, maybe summer jobs or a career change later in life, the Social Security system couldn't see those government earnings. So technically, you looked like a low-wage worker on paper, which would have given you a more generous replacement rate on the Social Security you did earn. The WEP was meant to adjust for that by reducing your Social Security benefit, sometimes dramatically. People who worked 30 or more years in Social Security covered employment weren't affected, but if you had fewer than 30 years, the reduction could be severe. We're talking about reductions of up to $613 per month in some cases, and for many people, that meant losing half or more of what they'd earned through their other work. The government pension offset was even harsher in some ways. This one specifically targeted spousal and survivor benefits. If you had a government pension from work where you didn't pay Social Security taxes, and you tried to claim benefits based on your spouse's work record, whether your spouse was living or deceased, the GPO would reduce your spousal or survivor benefit by 2/3 of your government pension amount. Let me give you a real example of how devastating this could be. Say you're a retired teacher receiving a pension of $1,800 a month from your school district, and your spouse worked in the private sector their entire life, paying into Social Security. When your spouse passes away, you should be entitled to survivor benefits based on their earnings. But under the old GPO rules, they'd take 2/3 of your $1,800 pension, which is $1,200, and subtract that from whatever survivor benefit you qualified for. For many people, especially those with modest government pensions, this meant their survivor benefit was reduced to zero. Absolutely nothing. And this particularly hurt women, because statistically, women are more likely to be surviving spouses. And many female teachers and government workers found themselves cut off from benefits their deceased husbands had earned through decades of private sector work. Now here's what makes this whole situation even more frustrating. These rules didn't apply to everyone with a government pension. If you worked for the federal government and were hired after 1983, you were covered under a different retirement system called FERS, which does include Social Security contributions, so you weren't affected. Military pensions weren't affected either. It was specifically state and local government workers in certain states and older federal employees under the civil service retirement system who got hit with these penalties. And the geographic distribution was incredibly uneven. States like California, Texas, Illinois, Ohio, Louisiana, and Massachusetts were heavily impacted because large numbers of their public employees didn't participate in Social Security. In Massachusetts alone, tens of thousands of teachers, police officers, and firefighters saw their benefits slashed. Some estimates suggest that across the country, about 72% of state and local government workers do pay into Social Security and weren't affected by these rules. But that still left millions who were caught in this trap. For decades, public service unions, retiree associations, and advocacy groups fought to get these provisions repealed. Bills were introduced in Congress again and again, but they never got the votes needed to pass both chambers. The breakthrough finally came in late 2024 when the Social Security Fairness Act gained unprecedented bipartisan support. The House passed it with a vote of 327 to 75. And the Senate followed with 76 to 20. That kind of overwhelming support for major Social Security legislation is virtually unheard of in today's polarized political environment, which tells you just how widespread the recognition was that these rules were fundamentally unfair. President Biden signed it into law on January 5, 2025, and it became effective retroactively to January 2024. Now let's talk about what this means in practical terms for your monthly budget and your financial security. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that people affected by the windfall elimination provision will see their benefits increase by an average of $360 per month, but that's just an average. Depending on your specific work history, your pension amount, and how severely you were penalized under the old formula, your increase could be much smaller or much larger. Some people are seeing increases of over $1,000 every single month. For spousal benefits, the average increase is estimated at around $700 per month for those receiving benefits based on a living spouse. For survivor benefits, which were often completely eliminated under the old GPO rules, the average increase is about $1,190 per month. Think about what that means over the course of a year. If you're getting an extra $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 annually. Over a 10 or 20-year retirement, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional income that you've rightfully earned but were being denied. The retroactive component of this law is crucial to understand. Because the effective date was January 2024, anyone who was receiving reduced benefits throughout last year is owed back payments for all those months. The Social Security Administration began processing these lump sum payments in late February of 2025. And by early July, they had completed sending out over 3.1 million payments totaling $17 billion. That's right, 17 billion with a B. The average retroactive payment that people received was around $6,700, though again, individual amounts varied widely. Some people got much more, especially if they were completely shut out of survivor benefits under the old rules and are now entitled to a full year's worth of those payments. These lump sums were deposited directly into whatever bank account the Social Security Administration had on file, which is exactly why it's so important to make sure your banking information and mailing address are current in the SSA system. Starting in April 2025, Most people who were already receiving benefits saw their ongoing monthly payments automatically increase to reflect the removal of the WEP and GPO penalties. You didn't have to do anything for this adjustment if you were already in the system. The SSA used automation to recalculate hundreds of thousands of benefit amounts, which is how they were able to complete this massive undertaking 5 months ahead of their original schedule. They initially thought it might take over a year to process all these changes, but by prioritizing these cases and using automated systems wherever possible, they got it done much faster. However, there were some complex cases that couldn't be handled by automation, and if yours was one of those, you might have seen your adjustment come later in the summer or early fall of 2025. The SSA told people that if they hadn't seen their increase by the payment they received in August, that's when they should call to follow up. But here's the absolutely critical part that affects a specific group of people, and this is where the "you must do this first" piece comes in. If you never applied for Social Security benefits in the first place because you knew the WEP would reduce them to almost nothing, or if you never applied for spousal or survivor benefits because the GPO would have eliminated them entirely, those benefits are not going to start automatically. The Social Security Administration doesn't know you want to claim these benefits unless you tell them. They're not going to seek you out. This is especially common with the GPO situation. Thousands of widows and widowers who were teachers or government workers knew that applying for survivor benefits would be pointless under the old rules because their government pension would wipe out the entire benefit, so they never bothered to apply. Now that the GPO is gone, they're entitled to those benefits, but they have to file an application to start receiving them. The same thing applies to spousal benefits. Maybe you're currently receiving your own Social Security benefit based on your own work record, but you never looked into claiming a spousal benefit based on your husband or wife's earnings because you knew the offset would reduce it to nothing. Well, now you need to check whether your spousal benefit might actually be larger than your current retirement benefit. In some cases, people are finding out that switching to a spousal benefit or combining benefits in the optimal way can significantly increase their monthly income. The rules around Social Security benefits can get complicated when you're looking at earned benefits versus spousal benefits versus survivor benefits, and the Social Security Administration has tools and calculators to help you figure out the best strategy, but you have to initiate that conversation. Here's another scenario that affects people. Maybe you worked enough quarters to qualify for Social Security on your own work record, but you haven't claimed it yet because you're not at full retirement age, or you were planning to wait until 70 to maximize your benefit. Meanwhile, your spouse has already been collecting Social Security. Under the old GPO rules, if you had tried to claim a spousal benefit before starting your own benefit, it would have been reduced or eliminated by your government pension. Now that restriction is gone, so you might be eligible for spousal benefits right now while you continue to delay your own benefit. That's a significant planning opportunity that wasn't available before, and again, you need to proactively apply to take advantage of it. The application process has been streamlined specifically for people in this situation. If you're applying for retirement benefits on your own work record or for spousal benefits, the easiest way to do it is online through the Social Security Administration's website. You just go to ssa.gov/apply and follow the prompts. The online system is available 24/7 and it walks you through all the necessary questions. If you're more comfortable talking to someone, you can also call the Social Security Administration at 1-800-772-1213. When you call, tell them right away that you're calling about the Fairness Act and they've set up dedicated staff who are trained specifically on these cases. However, there's one important limitation with the phone system. If you're applying for survivor benefits as a widow or widower, you must apply by phone because the online application system doesn't currently support survivor benefit applications. This is one of those quirks of the Social Security system that can be frustrating, but it's just the way it is right now. The timing of when you file your application matters because it affects when your benefits begin and how much retroactive payment you might be entitled to. Social Security has rules about retroactivity. For retirement benefits and spousal benefits, if you're past your full retirement age when you apply, you can generally get up to 6 months of retroactive benefits. For disability-related benefits, it can be up to 12 months. But here's the thing. Because the Fairness Act itself is retroactive to January 2024, you want to make sure you're getting credit for all the months you were eligible under the new law. This is another reason why filing sooner rather than later is important. The longer you wait, the more potential benefit months you might be leaving on the table, depending on your specific situation and when you technically became eligible. Now, I need to mention something that catches people by surprise sometimes. Just because the WEP and GPO are gone doesn't mean that all other Social Security rules and policies have changed. If you claim benefits before your full retirement age, you'll still face the early retirement reduction that applies to everyone. If you're still working and earning income above certain thresholds before you reach full retirement age, the earnings test still applies and can temporarily reduce your benefits. All the standard rules about cost of living adjustments, Medicare premium deductions, taxation of benefits, and family maximum benefits are still in effect. The Fairness Act specifically and only eliminated the WEP and GPO penalties. Everything else about how Social Security works remains the same. Speaking of taxes, this is something you need to think about carefully. If your Social Security benefits are increasing substantially, especially if you got a large lump sum retroactive payment, this is considered taxable income. The lump sum payment you received in 2025 is taxable income for the 2025 tax year, even though it represents benefits from 2024. This could bump you into a higher tax bracket for the year or affect other aspects of your tax situation. It might also impact your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, which are income-based. The surcharges for higher income Medicare beneficiaries kick in at different income thresholds, and a large one-time payment could trigger those surcharges for a future year. I'm not trying to scare you here. This is still money you've earned, and you're absolutely entitled to it. But it's smart to talk with a tax professional or financial advisor about the best way to manage this windfall, so you're not caught off guard when tax time comes around. Let me also address something that's been causing confusion. Not every teacher, firefighter, or police officer is affected by this law. If you worked in a state where your public employment was covered by Social Security, meaning your employer did withhold Social Security taxes from your paycheck, then you were never subject to WEP or GPO in the first place, and this law doesn't change anything for you. You're already getting your full benefits. The Social Security Administration has been very clear about this because they've seen a lot of misunderstanding in the media coverage. About 72% of state and local public employees do participate in Social Security. It's the 28% who don't, concentrated in certain states and certain types of employment, who are affected by these penalties and who will benefit from the repeal. There's also been some misinformation floating around, unfortunately, including scams targeting people who are trying to understand their eligibility and apply for benefits. Let me be crystal clear about this. The Social Security Administration will never call you out of the blue, asking for money or personal information. They will never demand payment to process your application or to expedite your benefits. They will never threaten you or pressure you. All Social Security services are free. If someone contacts you claiming to be from Social Security and asking for payment, credit card numbers, bank account information, or Social Security numbers, that is a scam. Hang up immediately. The real Social Security Administration will communicate with you through official channels, primarily through the mail at your address of record and through your secure My Social Security account online. If you're unsure whether a communication is legitimate, you can always call the main SSA number directly at 1-807-7212-13 to verify. The Social Security Administration has set up a dedicated webpage specifically about the Fairness Act, where they're posting regular updates about implementation progress, frequently asked questions, and guidance for different situations. You can find this at ssa.gov/benefits/retirement/Social Security Fairness Act.html. I know that's a long URL, but you can also just go to ssa.gov and look for the link to Social Security Fairness Act information. They've even set up an email subscription service so you can get alerts when they update the page with new information. This is actually a really useful resource because as complex cases continue to be processed and as people encounter unique situations, the SSA is adding answers and clarifications to help everyone navigate this change. One more thing that's worth understanding is the broader context and controversy around this law. While the overwhelming majority of people recognize that the WEP and GPO were unfair penalties that hurt hard-working public servants, there has been criticism from some fiscal policy groups and budget analysts. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that repealing these provisions will add about $195 billion to federal deficits over the next decade. Some organizations have argued that this accelerates Social Security's broader financial challenges. The Social Security Trust Fund is already projected to face shortfalls in the coming years, and adding this cost without a corresponding revenue increase moves up the timeline when the trust fund might not be able to pay full benefits. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget and similar organizations have said that while they understand the fairness argument, they would have preferred to see this paired with other reforms to ensure Social Security's long-term sustainability. However, supporters of the law argue that this isn't about adding new benefits, it's about restoring benefits that were earned and wrongfully taken away. These are people who paid into Social Security through other employment, or whose spouses paid in, and they deserve to receive what they're entitled to under the original promise of the program. Regardless of the political and fiscal debates, the law has passed, it's been implemented, and if you're eligible, you should absolutely claim what's yours. This money can make a real difference in your retirement security and your quality of life. For many people, it's the difference between just getting by and being able to live with dignity and maybe even do some of the things they've been putting off because money was too tight. It's travel to see grandkids, it's home repairs that have been deferred, it's medical care that's needed, it's the ability to help out family members, or it's simply the peace of mind that comes from having a little cushion in the budget instead of constantly worrying about whether you'll make it through the month. If you're sitting there thinking this might apply to you, here's what you need to do right now. First, gather your information. You'll want to have your Social Security number handy, documentation of your government pension if you have it, information about your spouse's work history if you're claiming spousal or survivor benefits, and your banking information for direct deposit. Second, create or log into your My Social Security account on the SSA website. This lets you see your earnings record, check what benefits you're currently receiving, if any, and verify that your address and direct deposit information are correct. Third, if you've never applied for benefits that you might now be eligible for, don't wait. Get that application submitted. You can do it online for most types of benefits or call the SSA directly. Fourth, if you're already receiving benefits and you got an increase but you're not sure it's the right amount, or if you think you should have gotten an increase but didn't, call Social Security and ask them to review your case. Bring up the Fairness Act specifically and ask them to verify that the WEP or GPO has been removed from your record. Fifth, consider talking to a financial professional about how this increase affects your overall financial picture, your taxes, and your planning for the rest of retirement. The bottom line is this: after more than 40 years of advocacy, lobbying, and legislative efforts, public servants who were unfairly penalized by these outdated provisions are finally getting the justice they deserve. More than 3 million Americans are seeing their benefits restored. Billions of dollars in retroactive payments have gone out. Monthly checks have increased significantly for people who need that money, but none of it happens automatically if you haven't been in the system already. You have to take action. You have to file that application. You have to make sure Social Security knows you want to claim these benefits. Don't assume they'll figure it out or track you down. That's not how it works. Be proactive, get your claim filed, and get the money you've earned through your years of hard work and service to your community.